Are you ready, Tara?
On my side, got recorder, yes, I'm gonna mute and you're free to start.
Okay. Hello, students, and how are you? This is again your module, First Additional Language Teaching in Foundation Phase. The code is FLT3701. Your lecturer exam is M. Ramokgopa, and here's my contact number, 012-429-6277 for any queries. And that's my email address, ramokmm@unisa.ac.za. Now let's look at this module FLT3701. I know I've been receiving a lot of requests and saying, take us through what is the expectation. The expectation is from outcome 1 to outcome 6, which is unit 1 to unit 6. That's what you need to study on, because if you look at all these units, they are related, they are connected. Outcome 1, it says policy guidelines for the teaching and learning of FAL in South Africa will be analyzed in that unit. In unit 2, the in-depth and facilitation of language skills in the foundation phase classroom, it will be also analyzed, and you will learn about it. It says at the end of unit 1, this is what you're going to achieve. End of unit 3, you must have an understanding and interpretation of the second language policies and facilitation thereof in the classroom. What you do, you ask yourself questions on, do I have that understanding? Can I interpret these policies? Because you need to understand those policies and connect them with real life, with what you see out there, not only to cram and reproduce. Unit 4, it wants you to understand, do I understand, can I apply language theories? You're going to be asked about language theories on the language teaching and learning and their implication of teaching. This is a language module, and I'm still going to stress that one as we go about. Teaching language outcome 5, skills using different strategies and methodologies. Strategies and methodologies. When they play soccer, they have their own strategies. So no, today it's 4-4-2 or whatever they say. When you teach a language, especially a first additional language, which strategies are you going to use? And which methods are you going to follow? You need to have understanding of those methods. And we go to outcome 6. It says design and implement appropriate assessment tools for assessing the level of language development of learners. How will you be able to design, to create lesson plans, to design assessment tools? And how would you assess your learners? Because at the end of the day, we want them to be able to acquire that language. They must be able to acquire that language, especially if you're teaching English, especially in South African schools. Most of our schools, the learner's mother tongue, it's not English. Therefore, English will be their first language, first additional language, which some of you call second language, some of you call FAL. Let's look at this. We're writing our exam on the 13th of October. That is on Friday. That will be online. Please, I'm going to upload instructions on how to upload. I'm going to upload them on announcement. I know you have been uploading and upload correctly so that you should not miss the marking of your exam script. Convert your work to PDF. Please do that. Remember, this is an Invigilator app module. I have posted on announcement all the information that you need to know before you write the exam about Invigilator app. Let me tell you, Invigilator app is very sensitive. We also do what we call proctoring. We can hear every noise you make. every shift you make, whoever is seated next to you who is writing the same module, let me warn you. Please do the right thing. I don't want you to fail. I don't want to work on those who have done dishonesty, because Invigilator app will do that. Don't ever think that you'll only submit onto my UNISA module. You also submit to Invigilator. Invigilator app is also your key, because it's the one that is monitoring you as you write. As I talk about this now, let's talk about the time and the situation we find ourselves in South Africa. If I have to travel to go and write my exam at a certain center, I'll make it a point I leave early. I'll make it a point I arrange transport. If I use a taxi, taxis are on strike, I'll make it a point that I arrange transport. The same applies to you. Go to a place where there is electricity, where there is connectivity, where the space is comfortable enough for you to concentrate and write. Those who are writing at home, tell them that they must give you space. Sit outside. Let them sit outside. Let them not be in the room, because they're disturbing you. Make it a point that you create a comfortable, peaceful space for yourself. Those who go to internet cafes, you don't worry about that also. You can go because, our situations are not the same. But go to a place where there is connectivity. Don't tell me that there's no connectivity. There's nothing we can do. UNISA doesn't take responsibility of that. This is an Invigilator app module. This is a third-year module. Please, let's understand each other. I have 5,000 students. Now imagine if all of you fail ABCD based on this. So I have to listen to all your voices, everything that you are talking with the other person. When you are writing, tell them not to disturb you. Tell them not to disturb you. We are serious about this. I'll talk about dishonesty at a later stage as we go by. Unit 1. It says after studying the unit, you'll be able to follow policy, embed teaching and learning, lesson preparation, implement teaching and learning, address different contexts of FAL teaching and learning. Facilitate teaching and learning of FAL as a precursor for medium of instruction in higher classes. We are in the foundation phase. This is very key. When your learners move from grade R to grade 3, as they go to grade 4, they learn every subject in English. Remember, they learned in their mother tongue in the foundation phase. Therefore, it is your responsibility as the teacher to see to it that they have developed very well. They have the English command. They understand the language. They have acquired English that they are going to use from grade 4 to the whole learning of their life. Develop and apply vocabulary for FAL teaching. Vocabulary is key. If you speak German, I don't have any words of German, I won't be able to speak German. So vocabulary of English words is very key. They need to have as much vocabulary as possible for them to be able to have command of the language, to comprehend the language. Now, if they ask you a question, let's say you have been asked a question and let's say they say, discuss this statement. Discuss why facilitation of teaching and learning of FAL as a precursor for medium instruction. Why is it necessary? Why is this statement so key? Can you explain it? You need to be able to discuss it or describe what it means. Okay. There are guiding principles. They don't just leave you like that. If you go through the CAPS document, South African CAPS curriculum, CAPS document. It has guiding principles, and these principles are also researched principles. Language acquisition is key, as I said earlier on, especially in the foundation phase. If they don't have that language acquired, if they haven't acquired their language, it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to learn any subject from grade 4. Now, here's the question. As teachers, we need to keep certain guidelines in mind. Here's the question. Why is it important for the teacher to introduce the language gradually and make learning as fun as possible? I never said, my question is not saying list guiding principles. You are year 3 students. I'll give you a guiding principles and I will say unpackage. Why? Describe what this principle means based on teaching and learning of fun. Because fun is not necessary, learners' home language. This is what you are expected to provide. For instance, in grade R1, learners might be learning the language for the first time. They never heard the language before, and they don't understand the spoken and written of that language. Hence, it is important for teachers to introduce it gradually. So when you read about guiding principles, ask yourself a question and say, why are these principles so important? Why is it important for me to have this understanding of these principles? I don't just go to the classroom and teach. I need to know who am I teaching? Who is this learner? Where is he coming from? The background before I can teach the file. In this instance, it's English first additional language or whatever file we are teaching out there. Implications, if that is not considered, learners may become anxious, show resistance to learning a new language. They won't want to learn the new language. They are anxious, they are scared because you didn't create that environment. So it's important for you to create that environment. Can you see that I've written a paragraph now as I speak to you? So it's important for you, if they say discuss, describe, give examples. What are the implications of this? You should be able to write and look at the mark that is given. If it says 5, see to it that whatever you write gives you at least 5 points. I think the question will direct you. The marks will direct you. Okay, guiding principles again. It continues. I'm going to be a little bit faster here. Guiding principles for teaching file. Here's another one. Purpose of teaching file is to allow learners to communicate in the language. That's the purpose. You don't teach to say they don't understand, they can't read. No, you teach them to have that understanding. They are there because you are there to guide them, to develop them. The question says, identify and describe types of teaching approaches that teachers use to teach a file. What kind of approaches are you going to use? From Unit 1 to Unit 6, you learn about different approaches. You can see that I'm not saying this is a Unit 1 question or Unit 2 question, but it's a principle also that allow interactive learning and simple processes. Interactive, you understand what it's saying. Simple processes, it shouldn't be too difficult because it's their first time. You must allow them to be able to communicate. That allow conversational and responsive teaching styles. It's important to allow them to talk to each other because they are developing that language as home language. A mother will speak to the child, go and give me that. Run, do that. You are going to do it that way for them to be able to communicate in that language. So we have teaching approaches that promote that we should allow learners to communicate in the language. So you must look at that teaching approach if it suits your situation. And you must be able to support your statement, okay? Or your choice of that teaching approach. and activities that allow maximum communication and learner responses during the lesson. So what kind of activities are you going to give them? You are developing what we call strategies. These are the strategies I'm going to use. Learning activities should be kept more oral and practical to promote communication. What strategies am I going to use? What activities am I going to use? As I develop these activities, I think I'm going to do this and that. I'm going to read a story, they listen and expect them to respond. I'm going to use a rhyme that have repeated words so that they can also repeat and they have vocabulary, they have understanding of those words. Language skills. These are interconnected. There is listening as a skill, speaking as a skill, reading and writing. But where do we start? They start first listening. As they listen and they speak, they mimic you, they imitate you. You teach them you teach them the sounds. You teach them to pronounce. And as they know how to pronounce, they can read the words through pictures. You're going to use a lot of strategies. I can't just say this is C. They've never seen a C. I'll put a picture and the word C. Frame of reference must be there. And as long as they can read the words, then we are at that level of reading. From that level of reading, they are able to write. They must be able to write. And let me tell you, language is about thinking and reasoning. When they write, they start thinking. They reason to explain as you give them homework, as you give them classwork. Okay, under language skills and listening, we have simple, discriminative, interpretative, creative, and critical listening. Have an understanding of what they mean. Simple is just listening. Discriminative, they can listen to the sound as you pronounce and say, but these sounds are not the same. They can look at the pictures and say, these are not the same. They can interpret. They do interpretative listening. They do creative listening. They listen. They do critical listening. Have an understanding of these concepts. Speaking. What kind of strategies are you going to use for them to be able to speak? Role play. As the role play, I'm the shopkeeper, you are the customer. I'm the nurse, you are the doctor. Conversations, you have those round tables with them. Dialogues. You allow them to use different strategies. There's what we call incidental reading, shared reading, group guided reading, paired reading. You need to understand when can I start with incidental reading. It's when you have that classroom with pictures and whatever, they will be able to go through incidental reading. Shared writing, interactive writing, guided writing, and independent writing. That's where now they can write on their own. But you are there to guide them. Okay, in Unit 4 and 5, there is what we call understanding and applying language theories to teaching and learning and their implications on teaching language. What is a theory? A theory is an idea. The approach is how to deal with that approach or the idea. How do you deal with it? These are some of the approaches: code switching, TPR, bilingual approach, communicative. You have them in your study guide. TPR, total physical response. What does it mean? How do I use it? When do I use it? Is it proper to use it for grade 3? Is it proper to use it for grade 1 or grade R? How appropriate is it? We also have methods like audiolingual method. It also relates to how you implement the idea or the theory. Okay. There's a theorist called Krashen. Remember we spoke about theories, ideas. Krashen talks about acquisition learning. The monitor, just, you acquire communication. Language by communicating. Learning is what takes place at school. The monitor, relationship between learning and acquiring. Have an understanding of what he means by this hypothesis. The natural order hypothesis, a question might come. Discuss how natural high order hypothesis can assist your learners or assist you in teaching for learners to acquire the language. Okay, the input hypothesis and the affective filter hypothesis. Why are they important? If you look at affective filter, it says it's about motivation. Teachers need to know how to motivate the learners. They need to deal with that to avoid anxiety, but to build self-confidence, to build positive attitude. So you read about that. Okay, we have another theory called Kamis. It talks about BICS, what we call basic interpersonal communication skills. And the belief is that communication through social situations outside the classroom involves social exchanges. You can look at the two theories and say which ones are similar. How do they talk to each other? What are they saying? But this one, BICS, it says it does not guarantee proficient for language for academic purposes. What do we mean? Can they use the process of learning language through social exchanges and then be able to read and write? I can have a neighbor who speaks a specific language. I can speak the language. Will I be able to read the language, to write? So it's very important for you to understand that I can speak English, but if I can't read, I can't write, I won't be able to progress with my academic requirements. There is cognitive academic language proficiency, which is called CALP. This one promotes language for academic purposes, whether it's the ability to listen, speak, read, and write is learned formally in the classroom. This is where you are, but you take advantage of what they have learned from social situations and you bring it in the classroom and you teach them for academic purposes. They don't come in as empty vessels. Okay, so have that kind of understanding and make connections. Okay, we have what we call common versus separate underlying proficiency. CAP, common underlying proficiency, separate underlying proficiency. First of all, you ask yourself, what does the word proficiency? You first ask yourself that one. Common, you know. Common, what are the common things that will help the learner to be proficient in the language? You speak to these terms. What are the difference? It says separate. What are those differences? If I know in English, I say this, in African language or in Afrikaans, I say that, then I'm learning the language and I will learn that we don't say it like this. In English, we say it like this. So from that difference between the two languages, they are also learning. They're learning the pronunciation of words as I've indicated here. So that's what it means. Unit 4, theories and second language. Note, Cummins believed that the following two main aspects are necessary for learning fun. I might ask you a question. Describe the difference between cognitive and behavioral acquisition. Cognitive, which involves understanding. Behavioral, which refers to habits. Let's look at cognitive. Believes that understanding plays a bigger role than how they behave. Learners need to be taught to understand how FAL works rather than developing habits which will assist them. But when it comes to behavioral, it says creating and encouraging an environment. Classroom must be conducive for paying attention. All these are very key in teaching. Best additional language. How they will help you to teach. Cognitive is very important. It's about understanding. But where do you bring the behavioral? Okay. I'm talking a lot about Biggs and Carp in learning additional language. And I have brought together the two hypotheses. Issues of motivation, self-confidence, and anxiety. Crushing through affective filter hypothesis deals with learners' attitude motivations towards FAL and self-confidence. Self-confidence, anxiety, it's key because they want to acquire the language. Note, this hypothesis becomes a problem when learners only experience a language in terms of CALP and not PICS. PICS has to be there. Meaning that if learners do not use their language socially, they see it as a strictly school subject, no fun attached. So they work together, but you need to understand them where they come. It is important to note that when language is acquired through PICS, makes learners more willing to learn. So how can you make it fun to avoid them having anxiety? It is important then for teachers to create a classroom environment which is both social and academic. If we go to Unit 4, Biggs and Carp, self-confidence and anxiety, you need to understand that. Here is another one about Biggs versus Carp, preparing a FAL lesson. Teachers need to keep Biggs and Carp ideas in mind, for instance, because they say you must use both in the classroom. Teaching and learning an additional language must be centered on CALP. And he says you must pay attention to natural order hypothesis. What is your understanding about natural order hypothesis? You remember one of the guidelines, they said start from simple. You can't start up there. You start from simple so that you encourage them to avoid being anxious, feeling, not understanding. So you need to know where to start. This will allow the teacher to scaffold which order of approach components of the language. Where do you start? Which order will you follow? Build up the information from the easiest to the most difficult. We see this from CAPS. Informal assessment can also focus on BICS. Do you see how we brought together the theories? Those ideas from different theorists. Formal assessment, focus on CALP and use monitor hypothesis. You'll monitor how far they are, and you correct them. What is common? Both sides is the input hypothesis. Recognize that the teacher play a central role in the foundation phase. The teacher impart the biggest amount of knowledge. Even though we say learner-centeredness, you are going to impart a lot of knowledge. But how do you do it? Through learners being actively involved. They're not robots. Teacher also plays a role with affective filler, as they can help motivate learners build their self-confidence and remove anxiety. So it's our responsibility as teachers. Please don't be anxious for the exam. I hope you're not anxious. Okay, Unit 5 talks about teaching language using different strategies and methodologies. Note, teaching is based on different strategies, methodologies, and approaches. They help to explain and understand how learners acquire or learn a language. A question might come and say, how will you help the learners to acquire vocabulary? Or have an understanding of English file or a certain structure in English. Most methods and approaches can be used together or one following the other. Teachers use different approaches according to classroom context. But due to so much diversity in the schools with regard to the following, example, age, socioeconomic background, and other conditions found in schools, note classroom situations, they differ from school to school, from learner to learner. Therefore, Van der Waalt, Evans, and Kilfoyle 2009 consider methods to be restrictive with rigid procedures favored by supporters of a specific view. What they're saying is that I can say this method will work, but will it work for all the learners? It might not. So hence we have to bring different methodologies and different strategies in the same classroom for the same learners, because they're different. Hence these authors and writers are saying sometimes methods are very restrictive. So check if they are restrictive in your classroom. And methods are more formal as they are controlled. They all have their rules. So you'll take this from there, this from that method and that approach and say, I think this will fit in my classroom. These learners are not the same. This one I treat like this, these ones I treat like this, but learning the same concept. So you have to understand all these strategies and methods for all your learners. So when you write, think about that. Audiolingual method, there it is, read about it. Read about audiolingual method. Okay, we have communicative language teaching approach. It's another approach. Note the approach teaches the use of BICs as a starting point on communication, and it's more about functions of languages than learning forms. I might ask you a question and say, what is the pros and cons of communicative language teaching approach? Or what is the same and what is different between the two teaching approaches? So have an understanding of these approaches. There's another one. So I've based language teaching approach. We can say, what is the difference? This approach entails that lessons are designed and the task as the objective. The approach is centered on learners as it uses language which feels natural to them. Teachers can decide on the time frame and extend time for tasks, but not possible with formal assessment. Have an understanding of what are the pros and cons of this approach. Where can it work for me and how will it work for me? There's another one, total physical response. Involves both memory and physical movement. Is it appropriate to use this in grade 3? For whom? Or can I use it for grade Rs because they are starting in grade 1s? But what about the grade 3? Can I use it in grade 3 as a way of dealing with those who are still behind? So you will decide, but have an understanding of what the approach does and how it works for learners to acquire the language. But look at what grade you are dealing with, what kind of learners you are dealing with. Okay, read about that. We have Unit 5, bilingual approach and code switching. Read about them. Developing and implementing appropriate assessment tools for assessing the level of language development. That is Unit 1. Unit 6. IFAL in the foundation phase reading needs to be taught from first year to school. Because by grade 4, learners need to be able to read IFAL, on the same level as home language learners as English is used in Lord. Do you see what your responsibility is? They must be at the same level as those whose English is their first language. So you need to know how to help them to acquire the language. We also have reading approaches, whole-word approach, phonics approach, balanced literacy approach, language. Have understanding of these approaches. Unit 6, still reading methods. They need to know how to read. But you can't just start and say read. You must start somewhere. There's modeled reading, shared reading, to develop their confidence. Guided reading, you are there because you are modeling. Where do you use it? For which grade? I might even ask those questions. Now, format of the exam. It's 100 marks. It has 4 questions. And no multiple, I don't know if there's a multiple choice question. I don't think we have multiple set questions, but I know I have a true and false question, but I don't remember a multiple. Some questions may have 2 parts to ensure that you answer both as required. You answer, for example, it says describe the difference between a method and an approach and give an example. You describe what a method is. You describe the difference between a method and approach, and you say a method is like this, or you can give an example of a method and an example of an approach. Do you see that it wants 2 answers? And all questions are compulsory. These are the kinds of questions, these are the verbs that we use to develop those questions or to question. Have an understanding what Bloom taxonomy is. These are the verbs that we use. Now, when we said your question paper, it's a level 7 question paper. Level 7, we have level 1 of Bloom's taxonomy. Remembering, the remembering questions, mine only have 10 points. And understanding and comprehension, it's only 10. Level 3 and level 4, where you have to apply and analyze, 40% of the question. Where you have to evaluate, bring that kind of understanding, being a creative, it's 50. These are high order questions. So imagine, don't expect any question that will require you to just reproduce. Start thinking, start underlining keywords in the question. So as you can see, the total paper, it's 10, 40, 50. Okay, these are some of the terminologies that we give to you. Have an understanding. Define, you give an exact meaning of what it means. Explore, you examine from every viewpoint. Justify, you give evidence. State, analyze. Describe, you give detailed account. Discuss. When you give detailed account, don't just write. After what you have written, read it and say, if a person doesn't understand what I have described, will that person doesn't understand the terms that you were asked to describe? Will that person understand? Think of somebody who doesn't understand. Now we understand. So write clearly also. Please, you are yet 3 students. You are going to be teachers very soon. Okay, I had assignment 2 questions. People were asking about what do you mean by create? Create means you develop, you make. So I was saying to you, develop a lesson, a vocabulary lesson. What is vocabulary? Now, let's look at that. If I go to that one, it says the theme, it's my family for grade 2. Your theme is family. Your theme is seasons. Your theme is healthy food. But this is a language lesson. So if your theme is family, what are you going to develop? What kind of skills are you going to develop? Listening skills. What are you going to use? You discuss that as they listen, they will listen to the pronunciation of the words. The words that says father, mother, words that end up with ER at the end. Or they will listen to words brother, and they will listen to the words where it starts with a sound, it ends with a sound. This is what we are saying to you. When you talk about language, look at those language concepts, language aspects. You know, sometimes you say, write a lesson on the theme seasons. They say the children will know that we have 4 seasons. That is not language. It's life skills or whatever. Okay, the case studies, there are scenarios. You will, the question might come and say, compare and contrast how language is used. Compare and contrast. What is same, what is different? You have to understand all these words that have been used here. The other one says, discuss and determine how Krashen affective filler hypothesis and Kami's theory of Karp and Biggs influence teaching and learning of IFA. You discuss and you determine how they influence learning. What is your understanding about affective filler hypothesis? What is your understanding about Karp and Biggs? Read about them. Okay, let's prepare for the exam. Copying from each other will be penalized. Don't think that we don't see you. Invigilator FCC. Plagiarism will be penalized as a criminal offense. Numbering of questions is important for my markers to understand what you have written. Please love what you have written. Love yourself. PDF and upload correctly, please. Follow all Invigilator app requests. And as you upload, just check. There is FMT, FPM, FLT, FMT. Look for the correct platform. Ours is FLT. Don't go and submit at a different platform where you're not supposed to. Some of you, when you upload, instead of uploading the answer sheet, you upload the question. I don't know what is the reason. Before you upload, just check we are uploading it. You have written, you have converted it to PDF. It is correctly uploaded. Less stress. Write neatly and clearly. Some of you, when you upload, it's just small thing. Learn how to upload. Go and ask your friends on how we upload. Some of the markers, they can't see even what you have written. Those who write by hand. Whatever you have written, be able to read it yourself because some of the people can't read. Hence, we say, write neatly and clearly. It's important to type. Read instructions with understanding. Respond to what the question wants without including other unnecessary elements. Please look at the mark. Don't write the whole page. If it's just 5 marks, I know. Just the paragraph is enough. Read your work before you submit. See if it makes sense to you. Proofread your work quickly. And let me talk about upload. The minute you are done, just upload. Because you want to upload at the last minute and you're all struggling to upload. Then time cuts you off. You want to send me your work. Please don't email me anything. We don't receive by email. Upload hours or minutes, minutes before time. Finish early. It's a 3-hour paper, but if you write it, it's a 2-hour. So you have been given extra time. Don't relax. It's an exam. Invigilator scanning is for verification only to have to upload to Moodle, upload to the system. That one is for verification. So don't come and say I've uploaded to Invigilator app only. That one is for verification. Year 1, year 2, you are given that opportunity. But for now, see to it that you upload where you are supposed to upload. Use my live account. and read all the uploaded announcements. I've uploaded something on the system yesterday. So read all that before you write the exam. Ensure the following proper understanding of instructions. I think I've spoken about that. Why is Invigilator app? Why is it important to use the consequences of not using it? What to do if you encounter challenges? I think those have been also uploaded on the announcements. Now, there are kinds of dishonesty. I spoke about plagiarism. Students copy answers from each other, recorded by the app discussing the exam, recorded by the app being assisted by other person. Some of you even send question papers to those that you pay. We are able to see where the paper comes from. Some of you use ChatGPT. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a question in the ChatGPT. It gives me answers, and my memo, I give it to the marker. If you have used the ChatGPT answers, we disqualify you. If you have used the Google answer, we disqualify you. The other online platforms, we disqualify you. We know all those platforms. My memo is quite a big paper. It's my answers, it's the ChatGPT answers, the Google answers, and we put them together and say, if you see a student who have just submitted this, means that student didn't study. How will he teach or she teach our children out there in South Africa? Copy from the study guide or other resources without acknowledging the source. Please acknowledge the source. We can want to write something, but acknowledge and say, from this, reference your work. It's important. Please, year 3 students, you know how to reference. This is, there will be 4 questions. And I wish you all the best with the exam. All the best. Please, I'm looking forward to a good pass. The best pass from you. Okay, enjoy your studies. Enjoy your revision. And looking forward to your emails as you ask questions. Looking forward to your responses and emails as you're going to write the exam. Be there on time. Please be on time. Please use a center that you know it has electricity, it has good connectivity. If you don't have Wi-Fi, buy enough data. It's for your own good. Thank you. Goodbye.